Let's go into the college football marketplace, and then we'll come back for the NFL because we've got conference title game weekend. I'm going to run through some of my conference title game picks here. I'm just going to give you all of my picks, and then we'll break down some of these games. So here's where I am for the college football conference games. Utah, I like to cover against Oregon. Pitt, I like against Wake Forest. I also like the over. Iowa, Michigan, I like Michigan and I like the under. I like Georgia and I like the under in the SEC title game over Alabama. And I also like Oklahoma State to cover against Baylor. Let's go through those. I just told you that I like Georgia and the under in the SEC championship game. By the way, we will be there. We're doing a show from 1 to 3 Eastern at Stat Sports Bar in Atlanta. If you're a Georgia or Alabama fan, or you just live close to Atlanta and you want to come watch our conference title game pregame show, 2 hours. I will be on for the second hour there from 2 to 3. We'll be live. Chad Withrow, Jill Savage, Jonathan Hutton, and special guests from 1 to 3 at Stats Sports Bar. I'm on the under. I'm on Georgia to cover against Alabama. What sides do you like, Furman?
Well, first again, did Link get the invite? Will he be able to attend the SEC championship knowing that he is a diehard Alabama fan despite your best teachings throughout his upbringing?
Yeah, no, so he got to go to 5 different trips with me on the Outkick bus tour. My 11-year-old did, including the Iron Bowl last weekend, which was an awesome experience in Auburn. But he is not going because basketball season starts, and he's got 2 basketball games on Saturday, as he does pretty much every weekend from now till March. So that is what's going on. He'll be home with that. It's just me. I'm spending Friday and Saturday night down in the ATL. I'll leave tomorrow right after my radio show to get down there for an event we're doing Friday night for Buffalo Trace, and then we have a public event on Saturday from 1 to 3 Eastern early in the afternoon before kickoff. But like I said, I love Georgia. And I love the under. Let me give you a stat here, Furman. Bama won 4 games in the SEC by 7 or fewer points in this past year. In the previous 6 seasons, they won 3 by 7 or less. Ultimately, I just don't think the Tide are very good. I think Georgia rolls, wins by double-digit, low-scoring game.
You know, this game is fascinating for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, you talking about how vulnerable this Alabama team has been compared to what we've seen from the previous editions. I mean, if we just look during the month of November, they had to outlast Arkansas, who's mediocre by SEC West standards. I mean, they had to hold on for dear life against a downtrodden LSU team. And last week in a game that you saw in the flesh, I mean, Alabama needed a 97-yard march in the waning seconds to force overtime against Auburn, which I know we hit on Monday, but I still can't figure out why Tanks Bigsby doesn't slide down in bounds and why Brian Harsin decides not to go for 2 and win in the final play, or at least with the ball in his hands. But I digress there. When you look at this number here, I mean, Alabama was a 3-point underdog a few short weeks ago, so odds makers have been forced to adjust this price based on recent performance and perception as much as anything else. You wonder what Alabama has left in the tank, having to play the Iron Bowl, where Georgia got a glorified dress rehearsal in their rivalry game against Georgia Tech last weekend. And then you talk about this Alabama offensive line, which is the biggest question mark coming in against Georgia's defensive front. I do think it's always scary when you get a team that's as well coached as what Nick Saban brings week in, week out, catching this many points, because you have to go back, I think, to 2007 to find the last time Alabama was nearly a touchdown underdog against anybody. And when you look at this Georgia offense, I think that's the biggest question mark. I know Stetson Bennett has been efficient. They've shown big play potential, but have they really been pushed by an upper echelon defense, maybe since week 1 against Clemson, where they failed to score an offensive touchdown? And yes, I know JT Daniels was the starter then. So you do wonder about Georgia's ability to run away and hide, and how aggressive Kirby Smart and Todd Monken want to be airing it out to potentially set up the ground game, given that Georgia doesn't have a ton of difference makers on the offensive side. But I think under makes a world of sense. I don't think there's a lot of value laying 6.5. I do think Georgia's defense will rise to the occasion. I think Alabama's defense knows that if they're going to have a chance to pull off the upset and keep their playoff hopes on life support, or punch a ticket, I should say, they're going to have to hold the Bulldogs to maybe 21 points as the top threshold. It's a fast track, always scary in Atlanta, but I could see a scenario where Georgia potentially built the lead. They sat in it So I like the game under the total if I was trying to make a case in this contest. Now, as far as some of the other matchups that you outlined, Michigan, Iowa, I mean, the number is actually a bit short if you're trying to make a case for Iowa, but you do wonder about Michigan and can they run it back as effectively given the emotional expenditure that we saw on full display? I mean, that was one of the more ridiculous atmospheres. To credit to Michigan fans for creating it, and then everybody hanging around in the stadium to sing Mr. Brightside in the wake of ending that long losing streak against Ohio State. So I wonder if Michigan can be as laser focused as they were here. I don't think Iowa provides a lot of threats. I mean, this is an offense yards per play that's outside the top 100. So I think Michigan can win, but I'm a little bit reluctant to lay that number. As far as the ACC title game, when you look at Pitt and Wake Forest, I don't think I can go over the total there. I think Pitt's defense doesn't get enough credit. They've actually played a little bit better in recent weeks. And the one thing Pitt does is they sell out to stop the run, and they're also great at getting after the quarterback. So they may be able to create, a havoc play or two, force Wake Forest off sequence, and ultimately be able to run away and hide. So I do like your pick there of Pitt. But this is a tough week. I mean, you have 10 games. I think the numbers are very efficient, and there's not a whole lot of wiggle room. The only things that I've dabbled on, I bet Houston's team total under 21.5 earlier this week, went under 54.5 there in the AAC game, and took a small, and I mean very small position, on Baylor, Oklahoma State under 48, because I think Oklahoma State's defense can really stymie the Bears' offensive attack.
I said I've got Oklahoma State and Utah. I'm taking both favorites in the Big 12 and the Pac-12 there. Pac-12, by the way, just to remind people, tomorrow, it's a Friday night game. We'll probably sneak up on a lot of people. You said you took a small position on the under for that game. Anything else that would stand out? Do you like Utah or you like Oklahoma State?
You know what? In the Utah game, it's actually going to be the first college football game I'll be at in person all season long tomorrow night. But when I look at this spot here, I think Utah, I mean, they have had this game circled. There's no doubt about it. All the talk has been they want to be the first Utah program to finally have a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. But you do wonder the false sense of security they could be lulled into because of that dominant performance in Salt Lake City. I mean, that game closed in that 3.5 range. Here we are on a neutral. And I think all the value is actually on Oregon. But again, when you look at this Ducks team, Anthony Brown has been a different quarterback home and away. I mean, 17 of 35 in the game against Utah. The Ducks were held to their lowest rushing output of the season with just 43 yards. I think Mario Cristobal gets his team going. And at 3, I would definitely lean towards Oregon in this game, and also could make a slight case for going under the total. I think both these defenses will be all right. And I'm very curious to see the kind of atmosphere created and how some of those Utah fans will travel, knowing some of their Pac-12 championship shortcomings in recent experience.